Back in 1480, there were two lovebirds. Vlad and Elizabeth were shooting and fucking. But it can't last forever. Elizabeth, she fell off and a love tale, woo, turned really sour for Vlad, a love tale, woo. He vowed revenge on God, it's a love tale, woo. And now in 1880, the love tale continues. And then we see all kinds of things like badly animated gargoyles and a spitting image of Elizabeth in a love tale. Woohoo! What was Luc Besson thinking with the love tale? Woohoo! What was with the perfume bottle? A love tale? Woohoo! I'm starting to think a lot of drugs were done on a love tale. Woohoo! Starting to think this wasn't well thought out, a love tale. Woohoo! Dracula, aka Dracula, a love tale. Why it was called a love tale, I have no goddamn idea. We saw people getting tail, but it wasn't T-E-A-L, it was, well, there you go. It was that kind of tale, a fairy tale. Woohoo! Yeah, so now that I've ruined that classic cartoon, and if you guys actually know what it is, I love you guys. You're also old enough to probably be watching this review. So yeah, Dracula, another spin on Dracula by acclaimed filmmaker Luc Besson, at least as far as his filmography goes. I'm going to talk a little bit about Luc Besson and then get to what the particulars of this movie was. So basically, written and directed by Luc Besson, The Big Blue, not Hey You, Miss Blue, not the Filter song. He did La Femme Nikita, he did The Professional, Leon the Professional, and The Fifth Element. He's done other stuff, but those films right there, if you can hang your hat on those, if you've made those during your film career, as far as like quality films, The Fifth Element is one of my favorite sci-fi films of all time. The Professional was magnificent. Jean Reno, Natalie Portman with incredible chemistry. More on some of the stuff that they tried to apply in that movie, which kind of played out in Luc Besson's real life. The Messenger, the story of Joan of Arc, which wasn't very good as I recall, and also the various Arthur and the Invisible movies. And then he would also do The Lady, he would do The Family, Lucy, which was probably the last big budget film that he did that people know. Well, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. I think more people saw Lucy in theaters than Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, at least as far as U.S. theaters. Now, I like Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. It was a pseudo-sequel to The Fifth Element. And he also did Anna, which did show that Sasha Luss certainly looks good. She can't really act, but whatever. Dogman, and June and John. I need to check out more of his stuff. I also need to get on my soapbox a bit about Luc Besson, because remember what I said about The Fifth Element being one of my favorite movies of all time? Well, I have to basically just take one little thing about that film and put it over here when I watch it, because the opera singer, Ma Wen, she was 15 at the time that Luc Besson started dating her. And guess what he was? He was not 15. He was born in 1959. And that is not the only time that he has done stuff like that. Luc Besson is a fucking creep. He's an incredible filmmaker when he wants to be. He is a very, very visually arresting filmmaker. He understands exactly how to get the most out of the least and make some really goddamn good movies. Sure, his star has faded dramatically, but Luc Besson, as far as filmmaking, is very, very good. He's just a fucking creep of a human being that should not be allowed to make any more goddamn films. I say the same thing about Woody Allen and various others that want to be creeps and be like that towards women in general. I mean, whether they're, especially if they're underage, but I mean, even in general, if you're going to do that, the stuff that he's accused of, the stuff that is pretty much out there that he has done, it is fucking ridiculous. So anyway, let's talk about Dracula, aka Dracula, a Love Tale. So yeah, we have Caleb Landry Jones, who was in 3 billboards over whatever that was. You know, I need to actually watch that movie in full. He plays Vlad, aka Dracula. If you know the story of Dracula, and I really don't need to recount the stuff, look at Nosferatu. And imagine what Anya Taylor-Joy would have been able to do in that. And I'm sorry, Lily Rose Depp was just not very fucking good in that. That movie was incredibly visual, and it was very arresting, and it was very pretty to look at. Unfortunately, the movie is also bland as hell and way too long. This is clocking in at just over 2 hours. Now, Apparently, this film, people were able to see this film last year. I think it was like either released in Europe and people used a VPN or something, because Luc Besson is still very, very popular over in France. And I wasn't able to see it. A friend of mine was, because she had a link to that website, or whatever the fuck it was. I was able to see this via the Regal Mystery Movie of the week. There are two more that I really hope are better than this. Yeah, I'm tipping my hands on how I felt about Dracula, aka Dracula, A Love Tale. I'll tell you what I really felt about here in just a second. But yeah, we have Caleb as Vlad/Dracula, who quickly becomes Dracula and then recounts his story to Mr. Harker. And then we get a few more things, such as Christoph Waltz, Priest. From Inglourious Bastards, you may recognize him. He's a really good actor. I don't know what the fuck he's doing in this. We have Zoe Bleu, who plays Elisabetta, as well as Mina Harker. She's pretty, I will say. I think I liked the hair she had in the 1480 part more than anything. I don't know about the dark hair. We also have David Shields as Henry, and then we have various others. I thought it was like a 14-year-old girl that played the little young doctor guy, or kid, or whatever the fuck he was. The only thing that stood out to me was the character Maria, the vibrant, fiery redhead, played by Matilda de Angelis, who, more of her, please. There were some scenes with her, especially the first scene they introduced her, where she is like, just the way she is entranced by blood. I'm like, God, oh, and magnificent beauty. I mean, good grief, she's beautiful. Just look at her. That being said, this is the best way I can describe this movie. If you've ever wondered what Dracula's story would be like if it was told in a really haphazard fashion with terrible editing, but with a Giorgio Armani perfume spin, this is the movie for you, you weirdos. This movie is terrible. This movie is bad on almost every conceivable level, and every time it seems like it's trying to spring to life, a couple jokes sort of landed with the audience. The tone is all over the map. It can't decide if it wants to be satirical. It can't decide if it wants to be serious. It can't decide if it wants to tell a proper narrative, but it's telling the same beats over and over and over. Really, all it does is kind of spin the whole thing with Mina Harker and Dracula, Vlad, whatever the hell you want to say. And the opening, I'll get to in spoilers here in just a bit. The opening is one of the most hilarious things and rush things that I have seen in a while. And I mean, really, again, outside of Matilda, this movie was absolutely terrible. Absolutely horrendous. It was a punishing 2 hours and 9 minutes. It really had no business existing. It definitely had no business being that long. And I thought this movie would have fit in just fine in 1995. It's just a shame this movie didn't get released until late last year in some markets, and now wide in 2026. So yeah, it very well may likely be on my worst films of the year list, and we're only in the early part of February. So yeah, everything about setting the stuff over here about Luc Besson, because he's not the only creep director. I'm not excusing what he's done, accused of, otherwise, whatever. I'm not excusing that. But setting that over there and just looking at this as a film, the man doesn't have it anymore. This reminds me of the 2014 Beauty and the Beast that had Léa Seydoux, or however the hell you say it, and Vincent Cassel. It looked fancy. It tried to do different things, but that looked like fucking Citizen Kane and Shakespeare next to this goddamn stuff. It was absolutely horrendous. So I'm going to get into spoilers, by the way, and just talk about a few things that I hated. So this is in theaters soon. 3, 2, 1. Spoilers. There you go. There you are. It's giving you a second to pause. So the opening had Vlad and Elisabetta, fucking for a bit, enjoying themselves, and then Vlad had to go off to war. And he basically asked a priest, pope type guy, hey, ask God to protect my wife. Well, Elisabetta ends up dying. Now, she ends up dying in a hilarious way where really Vlad should be blaming himself. But there's this terrible editing. I mean, this abysmal editing in this stuff. I mean, I am astonished that this film was actually allowed to be released in theaters with editing this bad. And even the score wasn't that great, but just the performances weren't all that great either. But the editing in particular, and just the camera tricks, I know the film probably didn't have more than like maybe a $50 million budget, but still, if you're going to make a movie look this bad, and it looks really bad, like it looks very generic as far as the costumes, again, besides Matilda, and, you know, Zoe playing Elisabetta or Mina to an extent. They're both attractive women, don't misunderstand me, but it's just, the movie itself just has no right to exist. That being said, we get this part where he's got this weird dragon mask thing. He attacks with his army, lighting a fire, and these people kind of rush towards it, and then they get attacked, like thinking, oh, wow, maybe we should have backed up from the fire, because it seemed like they took a few minutes, but it's fine. It's fine. Gets over to this giant hillside where it looks like he's going to kill some people, but then this one guy somehow just miraculously gets to him and says, hey, by the way, your love was ambushed, and she's being pursued. She got away. And she got to this forest, this very snowy forest. It apparently is nowhere near this very desolate, used to be lush landscape. He manages to get there. For some reason, there are about 8 million bear traps in this whole goddamn thing. Her horse gets killed. Broken leg. His horse gets a broken leg. And he's trying to kill and this kind of stuff, but then she's gotten her leg caught in the goddamn bear trap. And he throws his sword to kill the guy that's trying to kill his wife, but the sword goes through her. So good job, Vlad. You wanted God to protect her, and you couldn't even fucking protect her, you fucking idiot. So he basically blames the priest, even though it was your sword, you idiot. Breaks off this thing and basically says, tell, God, if he can't protect my wife, until he brings me back my wife, my life doesn't belong to him. Something like that. And there we go. And then Christoph Waltz's Priest is apparently a totally different movie. We see Matilda, my God, the way she reacted to getting blood, I'm just like, I would have died. I'm not going to say what I'm thinking. I'm just not going to say that. Oh, God forbid if any of the actors are watching this. But Jesus, I mean, you would just, who would not want a woman that beautiful lusting after? Anyway, moving on. The whole thing is he knows about this stuff, and he's been studying vampires and everything. Also, he doesn't really do much of anything. Harker ends up showing up at Dracula's castle, doing the whole land deal thing, stuff like that. But also, there are these gargoyle creatures. I'm not going to go over everything in granular detail about Dracula's story. If you don't know Dracula's story by this point, kind of the wrong review. Check out my Nosferatu review. You might get a little bit more out of that. But these gargoyles that look fine until they move. There is one point where these gargoyles, these like little CGI gargoyles, one does a hurricanrana on a goddamn soldier later in the movie. I'm not kidding, by the way. Actually does. I actually had to process that. I wish that I could have had them rewind it just to see, but I wouldn't want to relive any of this shit. I'm like, my God, he had a hurricanrana. What is happening? What is happening here? So anyway, basically, he has little gargoyle guards. Gargoyles, as it were. And he's in his castle and everything, and he's all far away. Maria also is one of his servants. God, I would serve her like no other. Anyway, I'm definitely not rich, and I'm definitely not handsome enough to ever have a woman like that. But that being said, man, just good grief. Anyway, she's a servant of his, and the idea is he is looking for his lost wife. That it just so happens that Mina happens to be a spitting image of. Okay, Nosferatu story, that's fine. Okay. But he, or at least the story, like it makes sense how they're trying to spin this stuff. He's just drawn to her. Don't get me wrong, Zoe is a beautiful woman, but still. And he realizes that John Harker is, engaged her and is going to keep him there while he goes for her. Well, Harker somehow manages to escape this whole damn thing. These gargoyles are terrible guards. I don't know what the comedy of this whole thing is supposed to be. By the way, there's also this part where Jonathan wants his story explained. So he explains his story. There is a point. This is what made me think of the DuckTales theme. I actually thought about this like halfway through the goddamn movie. And just thought, I was like, all those, I said, what is he, Scrooge McDrac? And I go, oh, DuckTales, that'd be pretty cool. And then I basically had to sit down and think about it, just for a second. that's how uncreative I am. I just think of stuff from the 80s and think that, well, it will fit here. I mean, granted, this tale is as old as goddamn time and older than dirt, and this film should be put in the dirt, along with Luc Besson for what he did to all those women, but I digress. We get this montage where these creatures are bringing all these, goods and everything and all this gold and stuff like that, and that's how he's able to pay for all this. Oh, and the way he's going to look for, his lost wife, I'm not kidding, is he figures out a way to get the perfect perfume. The perfect perfume, cologne, whatever, that attracts women, attracts whatever. There's this point where he is going to all these balls, and then he gets upset, or galas, or whatever the hell they call them in France. I don't care. Nothing against France. Beautiful women there, but god damn it. He just gets frustrated because one woman laughs at him too much, so he decides, you know what, I'm just going to bite everybody. He bites a bunch of women, which gives him a fucking army. And that it's so badly edited, by the way, you don't really care. So he's telling the story of Jonathan. Jonathan eventually does escape. Somehow manages to fall like a couple hundred feet, but somehow manages to be okay. The gargoyles also can't get him on a frozen lake because they're idiots. There's also this part where Vlad is talking about how he can't die, and he keeps trying to throw himself out the window onto the snow pile. I don't think he understands how snow angels work. Meanwhile, the priest is looking for answers and is visiting Henry Spencer, that is the soon-to-be husband of Maria. Anyway, we want to marry Matilda. Sorry, I don't know why this Italian beauty captured my attention so much. Probably because the movie was complete dog shit. But essentially, we just get, more recycled stuff. We also get some weird flash mob type dance stuff. I don't know why we decided to get that as before Vlad basically ate everybody, or bit everybody. And now the idea is basically he does end up getting to Maria, or Mina, that is. He gets to Maria, then she gets to Mina. Jonathan's not doing all that well because he's pretty goddamn sick. Henry ain't doing all that well either. The priest is not really doing much of anything, by the way. And I know the idea is supposed to be like a stupid Van Helsing type, but still Priest Helsing, as it were. But we basically get some really, really stupid fight scenes. We get this carnival scene before this, though, where there's a weird girl that's playing a mermaid and then a lemur for no goddamn reason. And basically the idea is we see this one point where he's teaching her how to aim a gun, just like he taught her before, because she really is the wife reincarnated, or he's making her believe that because he has superpowers. And the perfume. Then, by the way, once he gets into her room, he throws the perfume away. I don't need it anymore. Okay? What if she rejects you? It's fine. And basically, they end up literally getting together within just mere seconds. It is like, despite the fact that this movie tries to take its time, stretching some things out, it rushes so many things. I mean, I'm not saying we need to flesh this out anymore. God forbid this movie did not need to be a second longer than it was. But then they get together. Granted, it would be hard to resist Zoe, but she wants to basically be made his bride again, because she is that, or she's under a spell. So he bites her, and the idea is the priest also is trying to save him, but isn't able to save him. But because he bites her, they go to the goddamn Romanian castle, and instantly the soldiers are there. I mean, instantly, like, I did no pre-planning, nothing. Boom, they're just there with cannons so they can blow apart parts of the goddamn, roof and let the sunlight in. The gargoyles, by the way, are attacking at this point, and one hits a hurricanrana. Maria's dead, by the way, just before this. Maria gets shot and then gets her head cut off. And I guess an attempted comedy. It was terrible comedy, by the way. Then the soldiers are doing all their stuff. Like I said, one hits a hurricanrana, one of the gargoyles. And then Vlad goes on a killing spree, when they try to get to his tomb. And he ends up having the priest held, like, at knife point, sword point, as it were, and looks like he's going to kill him, but then He says, there's a way out. There's still a way, absolve your sins, this kind of stuff or whatever. You can be forgiven, stuff like that. And he did say, a priest did not protect my wife, but you haven't done anything to really cause any issues, so maybe I will let you go. And he does let her go. Meanwhile, the soldiers they're both winning and losing against these gargoyles because they can't decide if there's just 5 gargoyles here or like 50. Maybe not 50, but at least 15. Like, they can't decide on the numbers here. And I can't describe just how badly CGI'd and badly laid out and edited this whole damn thing is. So, essentially, Vlad realizes, you know what? Maybe the priest had a point. So he leaves he just turned Mina. She's all freaking out and everything and stuff like that. Because if you kill off the host, then everybody turns back to normal. But he ends up basically saying, you know what? Yeah, okay, go ahead and kill me before I change my mind. That was a quick turnaround. So basically he does, and that frees Vlad. And now Mina's freaking out. And he disappears into a pile of dust and floats away, shouts and dust Maximus. By the way, now the gargoyles are free, and they were apparently little Tibetan boys before that. I don't know why. And from there, the dust floats away. Jonathan is wondering what the hell he's going to do with his goddamn wife that apparently thinks that she was in love with a 400-year-old vampire, and that's it. Maria's dead and all that stuff, and it accomplished nothing. This accomplished absolutely nothing. I was astonished by just how unnecessary this movie was. Had they cut 15, 20 minutes out of this thing, had this been a brisk hour and 45 minutes, I might have accepted it. There were a couple things they could have cut. But, good God, y'all, this gets an F. This was really terrible. If it's not in my top 10 still of worst of the year, we are in for a long year, folks. That being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rentlin, and until we revisit another horror icon again, please, no more Dracula, please. It's dead. Undead, ironically. Happy trails to you.